Coming up on Network Africa, Mali's interim leader, Assimi Goïta, calls for unity and negotiations in the face of ECOWAS sanctions. US President Joe Biden says he is concerned over civilian deaths in Ethiopia. Plus, Zimbabwe's President Emerson Mnangagwa fires his security minister, Owen Ncube. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Layo Adegoke. Mali's interim president, Assimi Goïta, is calling on all Malians to unite and act as defenders of the nation in the face of sanctions that were imposed by neighboring West African countries. Goïta was addressing the nation on Monday evening after the Economic Community of West African States agreed a raft of restrictions against the country on Sunday over the interim authorities' failure to hold democratic elections next month as agreed after a 2020 military coup.
Vous le savez, la communauté économique.
Mali's interim president, Assimi Goïta, is one of several colonels who overthrew President Boubacar Ibrahim Keïta in August 2020. He called the ECOWAS sanctions illegal and inhumane, but says he remains open to dialogue with the regional body.
Mes chers compatriotes,
I have to say that even if we regret the illegal and inhumane nature of some decisions, Mali remains open to dialogue with ECOWAS in order to find a consensus between the interests of the Malian people and the respect of the organization's fundamental principles.
The fresh ECOWAS measures represent a significant hardening of its stance towards Mali, whose interim authorities have proposed holding elections in December 2025 instead of this February as originally agreed with the bloc. Assimi Goïta is now calling on all Malians to unite and act as defenders of the nation in the face of sanctions.
il revient à chacun.
It is regrettable that the efforts of the transitional government were ignored. Fellow countrymen, it is time for all Malians to unite to express and affirm our principles and defend our nation. Every Malian, wherever he or she is, has to act as a defender of the superior interest of Mali.
However, residents in Bamako on Monday shrugged off the sanctions, saying they supported the government's strategy.
Let them take other measures worse than the current sanctions. We will continue to support Assimi Goïta. I ask all Malians to unite for our full independence.
Whatever the sanctions, we really have to accept them. We cannot be independent without suffering. We have to accept the suffering. That is my will. I ask all Malians truly to accept sanctions, even though it is hard. We must accept it in order to achieve the desired objective, which is the total liberation of Mali and the whole of Africa.
In a communique issued after an emergency summit in the Ghanaian capital, Accra, ECOWAS said it found the proposed timetable for a transition back to constitutional rule totally unacceptable. The organization agreed to impose additional sanctions with immediate effect. These included the closure of members' land and air borders with Mali, the suspension of non-essential financial transactions, the freezing of Malian state assets in ECOWAS commercial banks, and recalling their ambassadors from Bamako.
Maritime insecurity, illicit flows, and terrorism are major obstacles to achieving peace, security, and development in West Africa and the Sahel. Well, that's according to the Executive Director of the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, Gada Fati Wali. Speaking to the Security Council via a video link, she reiterates that political will and increased international support should be encouraged to strengthen and cooperative crime responses.
It is clear that maritime insecurity, illicit flows, and linkages between transnational organized crime and terrorism all represent major obstacles to achieving peace, security, and development in West Africa and the Sahel. alongside efforts to provide humanitarian and emergency assistance and to prevent conflict and promote dialogue, including among local communities, we must encourage political will and increased international support to strengthen comprehensive and cooperative crime responses. Such effective responses must build on international legal and institutional frameworks, regional partnerships, and national capabilities. Across West Africa and the Sahel, we see that organized crime facilitated by corruption is perpetuating instability, violence, and poverty. Lack of opportunity and frustration drive more youth to piracy and to crime and leave them more receptive to radicalization narratives. Desperate conditions render more people vulnerable to human trafficking and migrant smuggling, and more women and girls at greater risk of exploitation and sexual violence.
U.S. President Joe Biden is raising concerns about civilian deaths caused by recent airstrikes in Ethiopia during a call with Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. All this follows reports that more than 50 displaced people were killed in an airstrike in the northwest Tigrayan region on Friday. A White House statement said the U.S. president welcomed the release of opposition leaders and is pledging support in finding a peaceful end to the war with Tigrayan rebels. Relations have not been good between Washington and Addis Ababa, where the government has been upset by repeated criticism of human rights abuses during the war with Tigrayan rebels. Mr. Biden and Mr. Abiy held a phone conversation on the situation, and this is seen as a sign of progress. The White House statement also says the two leaders discussed ways to accelerate dialogue towards a negotiated ceasefire. A court case involving members of the Zulu royal family is set to begin on Tuesday in an ongoing succession battle for the throne. Now, the royal feud followed the death in March last year of King Goodwill Zwelithini from diabetes-related complications at the age of 72. The late king had picked his third wife, Queen Dlamini Zulu, as his successor because she was the only wife with royal blood, but her death soon after triggered a power struggle over the succession. The High Court in Pietermaritzburg will now be hearing the matters concerning the late king's will, as well as a bid to stop an alleged secret coronation. The suspect in a fire that gutted South Africa's 138-year-old parliament building this month has been charged with terrorism, appearing in court for a case officials have described as an attack on the country's democracy. 49-year-old Zandile Mafe had already been charged with arson in connection with the fire that started on January 2nd. But the additional charge of terrorism was added because he had also been caught with an explosive device. The case has been adjourned till February 11th, and he is to be detained in a psychiatric institute after pleas from his defense counsel that he suffers from mental illness. Meanwhile, dozens of protesters gathered outside the court building in central Cape Town, saying Mafe was innocent.
We are protesting because we think Mr. Mafe is being a scapegoat. He's the fall man. They've got the wrong man.
The charges are still the same, except that we withdrew the charge of destruction of essential infrastructure. The last charge is the charge of it's under Terrorism Act, basically, whereby he used an explosive in Parliament with the result of causing economic loss.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has condemned the attacks perpetrated over the weekend in Nigeria's Zamfara state, where scores of people were killed. His spokesperson, Stephen Dujarric, says the Secretary General is asking the Nigerian authorities to spare no effort in bringing those responsible to justice.
The Secretary General strongly condemns the appalling attacks perpetrated over the weekend in Nigeria's Zamfara state, in which scores of civilians were killed. He extends his heartfelt condolences to the bereaved families. The Secretary General urges the Nigerian authorities to spare no effort in bringing those responsible for this heinous crime to justice. The Secretary General reaffirms the solidarity and support of the United Nations to the government and people of Nigeria in their fight against terrorism, violent extremism, and organized crime. Yes, go ahead.
The public prosecutor in Uganda has withdrawn a case against opposition leader Robert Kyagulanyi, popularly known as Bobi Wine. The politician had been accused of giving false details about his age while registering for diploma at Makerere University. Bobi Wine has in the past had his academic credentials questioned. He ran against Uganda's long-term president, Yoweri Museveni, in last year's election and complained of fraud. He's seen as a fierce critic of the president. Zimbabwe's President Emmerson Mnangagwa has fired his State Security Minister Owen Ncube. In a press statement, the president's office said Mr. Ncube had been removed with immediate effect for conduct inappropriate of a minister of government. The sacked minister was placed under U.S. sanctions back in 2019 over the government's crackdown on protesters, the opposition, and the civil society. The UK also slapped sanctions against him and 3 security chiefs last year over alleged human rights abuses. Well, Kenya has suspended all inbound and transit passenger flights from the United Arab Emirates for 7 days, and the suspension is effective from yesterday, Monday. Well, Kenya's Civil Aviation Authority says this was done to reciprocate a ban on Kenyan passenger flights to UAE. However, this ban will not be affecting cargo flights, which will continue with normal operations. In December last year, Dubai Civil Aviation Authority suspended all air transport services with inbound and transit passenger movements from Kenya. The Dubai aviation regulator expressed concerns that travelers from Nairobi were testing positive for COVID-19 on arrival, despite carrying negative test results. Still to come on the program. Tunisian craftswomen of Sejnan preserve their unique pottery making tradition. Please stay with us for more details. Welcome back to the program. President Muhammadu Buhari of Nigeria has endorsed the establishment of the Nigerian Diaspora Investment Trust Fund, NDITF. It's a private sector investment window with Nigerians in the diaspora to support direct investments in the country. At the presentation of a compendium entitled Plot 600 Diaspora Icons at 60, published by the Nigerians in Diaspora Commission at the State House, the President stated that Nigeria is open to embracing the diaspora direct investment by compatriots abroad. The President notes that the foreign exchange remittances by Nigerians in the diaspora have not only helped families, but enhanced the development index of Nigeria, while pledging support for the establishment of the Diaspora Intervention Fund to support the Commission to fulfill its mandate.
My diaspora agenda remains the same, that A, Nigerians in the diaspora are ambassadors at large by their character, comportment, and daily actions. B, they should be the best and excel in all in their endeavors. and see they should give back by contributing to the development of Nigeria. Specifically, their foreign exchange remittances to family members have not only helped such families, but enhanced the developmental index of Nigeria. We will support NIDCOM to fulfill its mandate holistically through considerations for A, the establishment of the Nigerian Diaspora Investment Fund, and B, the Diaspora Intervention Fund to support the activities of NIDCOM's engagement with Nigerians in the diaspora.
Well, shelter is one of man's most basic needs, and to bridge the housing deficit in Anambra State in the southern part of the country, Nigeria, Governor Willie Obiano has inspected the Awka Millennium Estate project and commended the developer for complying with agreements and standards. The project, which has been described as a smart city facility, is done under a public-private partnership model in response to Governor Obiano's Think Home policy.
Governor Willie Obiano arrives at the site of the Awka Millennium City. Phase 1 of the project began in 2019, spread over 24 hectares of land. Phase 2 has reached an advanced stage, and the governor receives a briefing from the developer.
This is a 100-hectare development called the Awka Millennium City. It's the first smart city in the whole of the southeastern part of Nigeria, first of its kind. I'll just explain to you. We have 4 kilometers worth of perimeter security fencing completed. So that's 4 kilometers, all fenced out.
Then the tour of the estate begins with inspection covering critical infrastructure, including access roads, drainage systems, street lights and water supply facilities, among others, which are all in place.
The hard work has been done. The major drain outlets have been created. The roads have been filled. What we're doing is now paving. So, and if you notice, the water infrastructure is ready. All the transformers have been paid for their coming in. We've cleared the area for the substation. We've also created ducts around the estate for the cable and fiber to the home.
The governor is confident of delivering the best smart city facility in the southeast and encourages the people of Anambra State at home and abroad to buy into it.
I'm encouraging everybody to come to this place. We have another estate in Zunaka and many more places where we have estates growing. I can assure you that and with the International Convention Center about to be completed now, very close, where people will live, hotel accommodation and what have you is almost given. So I'm very proud that under my leadership we're able to attract these very reasonable business people to focus and help us develop Anambra.
The total investment value of the project is $46.5 million, with the state government providing the land as equity. 73% goes to the developer, 24% is for the Anambra State government, while 3% is for the host community's social responsibility projects. From the Awka Millennium City project site, the governor moves to the International Convention Center to inspect the extent of work and ascertain if the February deadline is feasible ahead of the inauguration of the incoming government.
The United Nations mission in Sudan says consultations would begin with the goal of launching direct negotiations to resolve the country's political crisis after the coup in October. UN Special Representative Volker Perthes told reporters that UN officials are contacting parties to look for a way forward, and the army has raised no objections to the initiative.
The United Nations plan for consultations amounts to the only substantial effort at present to resolve the political crisis in Sudan. Although the military has no objection to negotiations, Other stakeholders, including resistance committees and some parties, have rejected sitting down with the army. The military takeover in October wrecked a power-sharing arrangement with civilian leaders that was meant to pave the way to elections after the overthrow of leader Omar al-Bashir in 2019. Protesters have regularly taken to the streets demanding civilian rule, and medics aligned with the protest movement saying that more than 60 people have died in clashes with security services. On the afternoon of the 30th of December, security forces banged on the windows of Khartoum Teaching Hospital, then fired tear gas into an emergency room packed with protesters injured in a nearby demonstration. Doctors and nurses say they tried to hide as a tear gas canister came right past their heads. They could not breathe and had to rush out.
Khartoum Teaching Hospital was attacked 3 times with tear gas inside this hospital, which received patients. Patients were sleeping in their hospital beds and the doctors were setting and were attacked with tear gas, and it left a mark there. Patients, doctors and staff were attacked with tear gas. This is unethical, inhumane and unacceptable. It is completely unacceptable to attack hospitals which are protected.
And I must say I'm very disturbed of listening to these stories about firing of tear gas rockets into emergency wards. The doctors and the nurses not being able to see anything. They have to transport their patients outdoor to be able to treat them and not suffocate. So this is a blatant breach on basic human rights.
Attacks on medical facilities seen during an uprising in Sudan 3 years ago have re-emerged during rallies against an October coup, deepening anger among the protest movement and further straining a chronically under-resourced health system.
And this is, of course, a situation which is very concerning. It's unacceptable that hospitals and ambulances and medical staff are under attack while they're providing their services and performing their duties.
Protest groups and the political parties ousted by the coup have so far refused to negotiate directly with the military. So the United Nations would start by approaching groups individually in the hope of moving on to a second phase of direct or indirect negotiations. In the meantime, more mass protests against the military are planned, with another round expected on Wednesday, the 12th of January.
Women of Tunisia's western town of Sanctions are preserving a unique form of pottery that dates back to several generations. It's a process that relies on strenuous physical labor and intricate artistic skills to produce mud-based pots, utensils, and statues. Take a look.
Sanctions, in Bizerte, northwest of Tunis, is famous for its unique pottery style and colors. Crafted mainly by women artisans, the pottery exhibits intricate Berber detail through a unique fabrication method. Situated some 120 kilometers northwest of the capital Tunis, Sanctions is a primarily rural society, heavily invested in close-knit communities that pass on generation-old skills. 86-year-old Dabia Sidani works on pottery with her daughter and her granddaughter. The women from 3 generations say the process is difficult but a pleasure. Dabia said she learned the craft from her own mother, who learnt it from her ancestors.
Our ancestors used to work in this profession. My mother used to make pottery, so I started doing it like her, as did my daughter. My mother worked, so did I, and now it's time for my daughter and her daughter after her to make pottery. This method is inherited through generations.
Using mud, fire, the kneading of their hands and feet, the pottery craftswomen of Sanctions have created an array of artwork, both for sale and exhibition.
We search for this mud, then we bring it and put it in water until it swells. We then soften it by pressing it with our legs and knead it so it becomes cohesive and unbreakable. From mud in the ground to cooking utensils, the process could be very tiring.
This craft is a cultural heritage inherited by generations, and we in the complex work to preserve this cultural heritage so that it does not disappear. Therefore, we encourage the new generations and the women who move to Sanctions area to learn this craft and preserve it. First, as a cultural heritage, and second, as a source of livelihood for craftswomen.
Despite its difficulty, these women say they take joy in their unique profession.
And that's it on the program today. Thank you for watching. I'm Layo Adegoke.